Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for once more joining us for this, the second in this series of Edit Online webinars, which has been very kindly sponsored by Clever, a market-leading EdTech company who specialise in identity management, multi-factor authentication, and the digital classroom. Today, we're very pleased to have Emily and George from WeTradeTech here to speak to you with their talk, Roll into Greener IT Recycling. As always, there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the talk, and if any of you want to ask a question, then please feel free to use the chat box to post them up, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Welcome, Emily and George. It's great to have you here today, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, all right.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Yes, I'll hand it all over to you now.
Lovely. So, thanks for everybody for joining us today. It's a bit cooler outside, thankfully, so it's a bit more comfortable. So we'll just sort of dive straight into it. I'll get my presentation on. Okay, so we're going to look a bit today about the behind the scenes of what really happens in the recycling industry. You know, a lot of people see collection as a fairly simple process. You know, old IT and electrical equipment is taken away and recycled, but actually behind closed doors, the reality is actually much more complex. You know, there's safety risks involved, compliance issues, logistic challenges, rising costs, export concerns, etc. That a lot of, you know, people, organisations don't really get to see or maybe not appreciate the what goes on in the background. So that's why we're sort of going to do a bit of a behind the scenes look today, and just sort of talk about what actually goes on behind the WEEE process and also what we do to sort of tackle some of those challenges. Just a quick fact there, an estimated 2 million tonnes of WEEE items are discarded every year in the UK. That's quite a lot. You think of how much schools, organisations, the quick turnover we've got these days with IT. There's always new and upcoming equipment, things being, you know, they're all being thrown out and the new brought in. So there is a lot. There's a lot that we have to deal with, and a lot that the wider market has to deal with as well. Just go into hazardous waste. So that is when we've looked at the sort of wider WEEE industry as a whole. The hazardous waste tends to be really a difficult point for many, particularly schools. There doesn't seem to be much in terms of directive really, especially when it comes to lithium-ion batteries. There's not really much you know, sort of how do we handle it, how do we store it. I feel like sometimes, particularly a lot of schools come and ask us, you know, how should we be handling it, how should we be dealing with it, and what we've actually found is many organisations don't actually store the WEEE properly. So it's often piled up in corners of rooms, cupboards, corridors, storage areas, with very little safeguarding in place. This can create fire hazards, trip hazards, and obviously wider health and safety concerns. Obviously, you wouldn't pile food waste up in the corner of a room. You wouldn't leave cardboard scattered around without a bin or a container. So really the question is, why do so many organisations still treat WEEE the same way, often piled up? This is where our cages come into it. So we basically give out free roll cages to schools and businesses across the UK. And this essentially provides a bit of a solution to the storage issue, at least, particularly when it does come to hazardous items, batteries, you know, used spent ink toners, for example. At least they're stored and contained in cages on wheels, so that if anything, you know, God forbid, anything does happen and a battery sparks or whatever, it's easily moved out of the way. You know, it's not at the bottom of a pile in a random cupboard or whatever. It's at least rollable. When the cages are full, all we do is simply exchange them. So not also does it mean that we store safely whilst on site, but it also means it's stored safely during transit. And it also reduces the collection times as well. So rather than having a van in the car park for an hour loading the back up with all different types of WEEE equipment, essentially, you've got a cage and it's just a 5-minute exchange, 5-minute swap over. So it allows the customer to get back on to focusing on more important work. Obviously, our role is not simply to collect WEEE and take it away. It's also to give customers a safe, compliant and transparent route for dealing with redundant IT and electrical equipment. The cages do solve that immediate on-site storage issue, but the wider value is also in what happens after collection. Customers need to know that their equipment is obviously not being passed through unclear routes, or of course ending up in landfill. So you're also looking for that confidence that the WEEE is handled properly from start to finish, which we will discuss in further detail a bit later on, and we'll also show a few things about how we provide transparency. But next I'll just go on to the actual sort of extraction and the value that's involved behind WEEE recycling. Obviously, there is a reason why recycling companies do what they do, and there is extraction that you can get out of it on a profitable basis. But a quick fact actually to point out, e-waste can contain a higher concentration of pure gold than conventional ore mining. Yet less than a quarter of all e-waste is actually recycled and the gold content actually recovered. So it does pose a bit of a question there of, the industry as a whole is maybe not being able to extract as much as what they had initially hoped. Even though we've got more precious metals, it's still sort of not happening at the rate that many countries had initially hoped for. A major factor of that is obviously due to cost and a lot of rising costs that we've got in this day and age. And that's why, extracting valuable materials from WEEE, it sort of created what you might call a fool's gold issue for the industry. On paper, the material is valuable, but in practice, the cost of extracting that value can make it very difficult to process profitably. This has become a major constraint across the recycling industry as a whole, particularly when you've got fuel prices, wage increases, taxation, business rates, rents, the list goes on. And as a result, companies need a much greater throughput of material and need to recycle at scale in order to make the process cost effective. For many companies in the UK, that does actually create a huge barrier to entry. And a lot of WEEE recycling companies have closed down as a result. For us, we just focus on that throughput. We sort of ensure we meet our own requirements in order to make things worthwhile. But we'll talk about that further on. Logistics. It's recycling is in many ways just a logistics issue. All the companies basically face the same challenge, which is how to move waste material from A to B at the lowest cost with the fewest touch points, whilst also keeping the process efficient for both the customer and the recycling company. If there is too little waste, the collection may not be cost effective. If there's too much, it can create bottlenecks and customer dissatisfaction. It's a constant balancing act that both sides need to work on for it to manage efficiently. And we often say that the only thing worse than not doing a collection is actually collecting items that do not make any money. With the first you lose, with the second you lose twice. So this is why now many companies you might have seen are imposing a minimum number of qualifying items to make a collection financially viable or otherwise charging. Obviously, this has been made massively worse by the rise in transportation costs that we're seeing in the country, the fuel prices, the ULEZ charges, the wage increases as well. Particularly that the fuel prices, they've risen obviously significantly recently, but also over the last decade. The price of second-hand refurbished electrical goods, however, such as laptops and tablets, has genuinely gone down. So basically that means you've got recycling companies facing upward pressure on operating costs, while the resale value of items is actually falling. Unlike many other industries, recycling companies cannot simply increase their prices to offset rising costs. You know, you've got the local coffee shop down the road, they might increase their prices to offset some of those costs and make the business run more effectively and profitably. In recycling, it's not that simple. They've got to find other ways to remain viable. This is why many companies no longer accept certain items for free, or they now charge for them. Batteries, toners, smart boards are some of the main examples. For us, I mean, our main approach really is focusing on critical mass and high volume of waste throughput through concentrated geographical recycling rounds. In simple terms, we onboard customers in tight clusters so it can move efficiently from one customer to the next without travelling long distances between collections. This does obviously improve our carbon footprint, and it also means we are regularly in the area, so customers can book collections knowing they're likely to wait days rather than weeks. With that in mind, that's how we're able, one of the reasons why we're still able to offer a free service, because we are really pushing on the high volume throughput. So that's basically how we sort of operate as that one-stop shop basis. Obviously still offering the customer free of charge. It's on a cost neutral basis. But just to sort of look ahead and where the sort of WEEE industry is expected to go. Minerals and materials found in WEEE are actually expected to increase significantly over the next 10 to 20 years. Obviously, that's being driven by quite a few factors. You've got the electrification of transport, the growth of healthcare devices and the Internet of Things, and the general demand for electrical and electronic goods. But at the same time, we are seeing more planned obsolescence. So this is where products are designed or engineered to basically fail, slow down, or become unsupported within a specific time frame, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with now. You've got, your iPhones turning off support for older models, tablets, things just being harder to repair. But the reason is simple. Manufacturers want customers to buy the next product, not obviously repair an old one. But that does have a major impact on recycling and reuse. So some people may remember when desktop PCs were quite large and easy to repair, you could often swap parts over, quite easily extend the life of the machine and avoid replacing the whole thing. But obviously, this is not the same anymore. Things are often sealed or designed in a way that discourages the repair. The same is happening with vehicles. Even just on a small basis, we've found that, you've got to take your car to an authorised dealership, not just your local mechanic. So, more repairs are becoming dealer only as well. So it's happening on a larger scale, really. This creates real challenges for the remarketing and recycling industry going forward. And just to sort of talk about the industry and where it's going and your support, I'm going to bring in my colleague George, who's going to discuss a bit about that.
Yep, so thank you very much, Emily. I think you've covered most of the basis there, and I'm going to have a chat to you now on about planned obsolescence and security and lots of other things as well. So planned obsolescence is a growing problem. On one hand, the volume available WEEE is increasing. On the other hand, a large amount is still ending up in landfills, which is not good for the environment, and it's not what we want to see. Devices are having shorter lifespans, and meaning that it's getting thrown away much quicker, and it means that there's much more need for this than there ever was before. So just for an example, it's stuff like phones stop receiving software support, and computers no longer being compatible with new operating systems. For example, Windows 10 ended support in October of last year. and the last official update is October of this year. So in the next few months, Windows 10 will cease to be supported from Microsoft, which means then you are going to have more security threats, software support is going to be dropped, and it's just going to make everything really difficult for a lot of older architecture. Now, a lot of customers that we deal with are still using Windows 10 machines, but going forward, it's going to be more difficult for them, and it just means that the risks of using older machines are much more risk for data and security threats. And going over what Emily was talking about, I think this is part of with companies. They are making tech throwaway, basically. They're trying to make that every few years you have to upgrade, and this is what is causing to the mass need more for this than ever before. So I think on that, I think I've pretty much gone through on what I need to go through. I'm going to pass you back over to Emily now, who is going to have another speech to you about our asset management portal, which is a very exciting aspect of what our company offers.
Brilliant, thank you, George. So hopefully that's me back on here now. So yeah, just to sort of summarise a few main points. Let's go back to this. So ultimately, our company, WeTradeTech, we provide a free one-stop shop for WEEE management as a whole by taking the rough with the smooth. So all used toners, batteries and smart boards, along with other redundant IT and electrical waste to ensure that the customer only has to deal with one WEEE recycling company, making the whole process a much smoother one. We offset some of the costs involved in collecting such items by ensuring we have a strong throughput of equipment, WEEE en masse, and also allows us to balance it out our end and provide the customer with a free service. Obviously, as well as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we also provide the free roll cages. So basically the WEEE can be stored safely, maximising your space and minimising the time needed to spend on collections as well, allowing you to focus on more important things and having a tidy office to do so in. But it also means that we get around our collection routes a lot faster, saving on labour time there as well. In terms of the duty of care documentation, obviously that's another big factor. So we provide everything from A to B really. So you've got the waste transfer notes, hazardous waste consignment notes, asset reports that'll list a make, model, serial and asset tag number of everything we collect. Obviously very important for every organisation's audit trail. And also we provide the data destruction certificates. So that will list all the data bearing devices on that certificate. So all your, for example, hard drives, data tapes, CDs, floppy disks, USB sticks, everything like that. And also where we've had to destroy Chromebook motherboards and other built-in devices, they will all list on the data destruction certificate. We do, just to briefly mention about that actually, we do have an on-site 50 kilowatt twin shaft shredder. So essentially that's how we actually manage the destruction process. It all goes through the shredder. And all the documentation afterwards is basically uploaded digitally. So it's all uploaded to the portal, giving you a full audit trail of all the recycled kit. Obviously, you know, we've talked a lot about the WEEE recycling process, the wider industry, you know, how people store it and what sort of the best way is to handle it. There's still obviously, there's not much information really across the, you know, from the government and in the wider society about how to sort of handle certain things. So we've looked to sort of tackle a lot of that. Obviously the cages are a massive plus, just allowing you to have everything on wheels. You know, it sort of it provides that safety element as well, and it gives you a bit of space back and frees up a lot of time on both ends. So hopefully, you know, you've sort of had that a bit of a useful behind the scenes view of what recycling actually entails. As I said from the outset, it's not as easy as what majority of people often think from the outset. It often involves a lot of real challenges. as I just mentioned, safety, logistics being a big one, cost, and also your environmental responsibility, and obviously how we, process and deal with a lot of those challenges to make sure that the operation works effectively as possible, by still providing our customers with a free, simple and fully traceable service that obviously keeps the WEEE away from landfill. As demand for electrical goods and critical materials continues to grow as it does, obviously having everything in hand and thinking about the right WEEE recycling partner is only going to become more important. So that's just sort of a point to leave you on, I suppose, just to think out maybe your own processes, how you deal with the WEEE, even on a small scale basis, with sort of batteries at home and things, and sort of, your own sort of responsibilities. And that pretty much rounds us.
I'd like to thank you very much, Emily and George, for delivering this talk today. It's been really informative. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
See if Mike can.
We hope to have you back in the future.
There we go. Yes, thank you very much. I've turned the PowerPoint off now. But yeah, thank you for having us. If there are any questions or anything that people want to get in touch about afterwards, then by all means reach out. Obviously our website, www.WeTradeTech.com, you've got our phone line there. Also, if you do create an account on the website, when you're on that main dashboard that I showed you, it will show you my contact email and my direct contact mobile as well. So if there are any queries or anything off the back of it, feel free to get in touch and I'd be happy to help out.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thanks a lot, Emily. Thanks a lot, George. And
thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having us.